Welcome back to Deep Dive. My name is Ben Smith. It's my honor to be here with Pastor Shawn Scarborough, lead pastor of Family Worship Center in Lakeland, Florida. Our goal for these conversations is to dive deeper into the gospel of God as we unpack some key points from Pastor Shawn's Sunday messages. Our hope is that this will be a catalyst for discipleship in your life and hopefully lead to more conversations with your family, with your friends, and in your groups. Pastor Shawn, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
So it's that time of year where rhythm is reinstituted, school has started back, vacations have pretty much come to a close, and you've begun a new series, Love and Serve. And this particular series hits home with you, as you brought out in week 1. You told that story. So love and serve. It seems clear from the last couple of weeks that we can, I guess, possibly serve but not have love. You read the passage where Jesus addressed the Pharisees, where they were doing things, but their heart was far from God.
Right.
So in that regard, it's possible, maybe they didn't exactly have the right heart of servitude, but it's possible to do things that may be right, but your heart not be in the right position while you're doing it. And I'm not trying to be poetic, but since you've drawn out from the gospel that there's a distinction between the two, love and serve, is it possible that you can love and not serve?
Probably. I think we see that in relationships. People that don't develop good habits, they don't maybe, to the rhythms that you speak of, they don't necessarily shape their life around those rhythms. And I think they can have love, but then in the absence of service, the person, I will say it like this, they go unloved. Meaning, yes, it's in my heart, but I didn't actually demonstrate, so I didn't love you, even though I have love for you. So maybe it's semantics, but I think you can love someone without serving.
Gotcha. That would be really hard in the context of relationships.
For sure.
To love them and not serve them, because it seems like if you love, out of that love that just flows, it seems like it would automatically flow servitude toward that person. Because you want to see good for them. You want to help them. But I guess you're right in that sense too. Like you can be compassionate towards someone, love someone, be connected with them, but in a sense, I guess be lazy in that relationship and not do things.
Seems like it.
I want to use the word that you used in week 1, discipline. Mm-hmm. That was a great word. So it is possible that a person can be full of love and lack discipline in regard to this conversation.
I think so.
The discipline to do something.
Yes.
The discipline to serve. Okay. To dive more into the conversation of week 1, serving authority, there was a day when you didn't question authority. Like I hear that talked about. I don't know that I've lived in that day. I don't think in my lifetime, I don't know that I've lived in that day. Certainly it seemed more prevalent in the earlier years of my life than it does today. But there was a day where you didn't question authority. How have we societally gotten so comfortable talking with our parents, with our boss, or maybe about our parents or about our boss, leadership, and not just directly questioning, but defying leadership, parental leadership, authority in the workplace? How have we societally gotten so comfortable with that?
Yeah. I think I take it back, and this is super simple. I think I put it back on entertainment. If you go back to particular, my generation as kids, so I was a teenager in the 90s, kid in the 80s. There was a lot talked about Gen X, slackers, disrespectful, all of it was true. For sure, it was all true. We were also the first generation that we didn't know what wasn't a television. So if you go before my generation, my parents, the boomers, there were a lot of those who didn't have TVs in their homes. It was a different level of respect because they didn't see so many bad examples. Entertainment, television, streaming, whatever, the majority of these made-up stories they're disrespectful. Mm-hmm. They're funny because they're disrespectful. Mm-hmm. When you go back to the Married with Children days with Peg and Al Bundy, they were extremely disrespectful to each other. Their kids were disrespectful to them. Then The Simpsons popped on. So blame it on Fox, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I was definitely raised on or grew up with television that was extremely disrespectful. Mm-hmm. That would not be true of my parents. That would be true of every generation thereafter us. Even things like today, I think it's getting worse, if I can say it that way. Every generation, by the way, thinks the next generation's worse. So I think that's part of it. But when I see like what's on my kids' feeds or whatever, it's not hypothetical or entertainment. It's real. Like there's somebody actually filming a real life event of someone actually going 180 miles an hour down the road. That's not in a closed course on television made to look like. There's nothing safe about this at all. And, you watch just too much of those things and it erodes your values of leadership or rules or whatever. And, the kids might bring home something where the phone was on and video during class. And I'm always amazed. I'm like, what's going on right now? And they're like, well, the teacher's teaching. Well, then how is this happening 3 rows over? That would not have happened 20 years ago. But it does happen today.
Yeah.
And so I blame everything. Maybe it's all Hollywood. I blame it all on Hollywood. Why don't we do that?
Yeah. So this is a reality that these things have occurred. What implications is this causing for the church?
Well, I think the implications are huge. And I think that's where it goes back into some of what we are talking about: loving, not serving, serving, not loving. For instance, let's take music. Music has gotten extremely important it has always been important in church. You can go all the way back to the Psalms. But it's begun to be maybe more where worship music is on your stream or your playlist, and it wasn't there before. I mean, nobody was walking around listening to worship music 20 years ago. Maybe some CCM, but for the most part, worship wasn't on. You only heard worship in church. As it's become its own genre, we've gotten really comfortable walking around listening to worship music. We'll walk into church, lift our hands, go through the motions of worship. But I think that's what Jesus was speaking to in that story. Their hearts were far from him. Like if we walk out of the sanctuary and we had our hands held high, but on Tuesday, our behavior looks just like our news feed, clearly our heart is not connected to him. Or we would desire to, again, serve him on Tuesday because we love him. So I think the implications for church are we're not even loving God well. I mean, if we go back to the Old Testament, he says, remove from me the noise of your songs. To the sounds I won't listen, but let justice and righteousness roll down like a river. We can go through the motions and our heart not be there. So really, how do we feel about people? How do we, in our heart, think about them? That is a reflection of our relationship with God. And I think that's having huge implications in church today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I ask this question often in our foundations class.
Yeah.
When we talk about the Word of God and we talk about spiritual disciplines, prayer, reading the Bible, worship. Yeah. And I'll ask them, what challenges do you face that inhibit you from opening up the Word and reading or getting alone and praying? And always one common answer that will come up is time, just time. And so then I'll challenge them back and say, there's time somewhere in the day that we all can make for something. And we'll often say, you make time for the things that you absolutely want to do. You just do. And wrapping that back to the entertainment piece, there's something in there, whether it's phone time, whether it's TV time, whether it's just the fact that all of these things in regard to entertainment have reduced our attention span and our discipline. Yeah. We can work through that to say, no, this is a priority for me, so I need to do this. Yep. But it has contributed to that, absolutely. So going back to the leadership realm, where's the balance of helping facilitate growth by pitching ideas, by maybe disagreeing respectfully against just outright being disrespectful and obstinate?
Yeah. Well, I think they're two completely different things. When somebody sits down, like in a team meeting, if somebody sits down to collaborate around an idea to make it better or to collaborate around a problem to create a solution, those conversations should be spirited. Those conversations should absolutely have differing opinions. And at that point, a good leader isn't going to be offended by an opposing position. Where the conflict comes in is once the decision is made, everybody leaves the table, then you've got the meetings after the meetings where people are complaining about the final decision or complaining about somebody else's idea in the room. And, it's unfair because when you sit down and you throw ideas on a wall, there's going to be some dumb ideas. There are going to be ideas that just don't work. And there's even going to be consensus that's going to make a decision, walk out of there, and that decision isn't going to work. That just happens. But if people don't feel safe because we're always judging each other so harshly, it erodes the idea to even be able to have positive collaboration. So you'll get together and maybe people don't talk as much because they're afraid of what the coworker might say about their idea when they walk out of the room, in the hallway, next, like whatever. And then we get worse ideas. And then obviously the leader is tagged with the bad idea. People talk about the leader. It's just a cycle, right? Like it's just a cycle.
Well, I guess in that regard, emotions are connected to it.
Sure.
Versus, I like the word you use, spirited.
Yeah.
It's like we all should be passionate about what we do, despite
Absolutely.
what work realm we find ourselves in. And we contribute to those conversations and in those meetings with our whole heart. And then once the decision's made, then it's the responsibility of the subordinates to carry out that decision without the grumbling, the complaining, I'd have done it this way, whatever. And you even brought that up, which I thought was excellent. You know, if you are honoring in this day, in this position, there will be a day where the Lord will trust you, where you get to make the decisions. And I thought that was good. And I think that should be motivating for everybody listening, that, you know, you don't get this without this.
Sure.
You know, you have to first, and Jesus said it, those of you who desire to be greatest must first learn to serve.
Yep.
So I thought that was a really good exhortation there in your message as it relates to love and serve.
Yep.
It was wonderful. In week 2, you got into, at the beginning of the message, election, predestination conversation, which you defined. Calvinists believe in election, predestination, believe that God created some people for heaven and that he intentionally created all others for hell, which obviously we don't believe, but they would call Jesus' sacrifice on the cross limited atonement because it doesn't cover all. You emphasize he paid for the sins of all humanity. He didn't create anyone for hell. The elect, the beloved, as you mentioned, are those who choose Jesus. Why is this such a prevalent conversation today? Has it always been a prevalent conversation? Why are we having to combat it so hard that salvation is available to all that would just call upon his name?
Yeah. Again, we can put it back on our news feeds or the internet or whatever. It's always been a conversation. I mean, it's been a conversation since the 1600s when Calvin and Calvinists and Arminians were battling it out. So, and we're not going to solve it in our generation, right? I just seek to let people know this is the side of the theological debate we're on, so they know fully what we believe, why we believe it. So maybe they have some tools to have good conversations, spirited conversations with their Calvinist friends, who, by the way, love Jesus and are going to heaven too. But it is, I think it might be a little louder than it used to be, because we do have a lot of smart, good academic people arguing these points on our news feeds, and so it's constantly in our thoughts. In fact, new Calvinism, so we'll turn the corner around the early 2000s, was on Time Magazine called one of the new ideas of this era. So I think you had a new group of, in that time, it was John Piper, Matt Chandler, Mark Driscoll. These guys were loud voices on the internet. Their voices were Calvinistic. We hadn't really on our side, we hadn't really picked up how to figure out what to do online yet. So we were slow to the party. And I think there's just a lot of it that exists, which causes us to debate more.
The turn of the millennia there, that was on the back end after that Passion Conference.
For sure.
Right? Yep, where John Piper.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Let's talk about like versus love. We use the word like today, but that hasn't always been a word to use. That's something kind of more modern. We say, I don't like that person, and we violate the word of God because we're called to love. You brought that up. Something I'll often say is like, that person's not my cup of tea.
Sure.
Which is probably the same thing of saying like, I don't really like that person. So take me a little bit further into the distinction. Like, how do we love someone we don't like?
Yeah.
And what is really, when we say we don't like someone, what does that really mean? Does it mean we don't love them, or does it mean it's like our personalities just conflict and so we just don't get along very well, and that's what that means?
Yeah, maybe it's just a slippery slope. Maybe it's that if I just make a habit of, and it becomes super comfortable for me to say, I don't like that person, that person's not my cup of tea, whatever, I'll dismiss them. I won't look for ways that I'll use the word like, where do I like this person? What about them do I like? Because there's not everything that I don't like, but maybe it's something prominent that I don't like, which causes me to kind of dismiss who they are, not be as caring to them, all because of an emotion. So, and we'll talk about serving people as we get on in this series, but I wanted to kind of lean into the loving people part first. If I don't like somebody, let's say if we're just going to use the gospel word, because it doesn't give us the word like, and we've become very comfortable being able to say, I don't like them. We would never say, I don't love that person.
Right.
We just wouldn't.
That's crossing the line.
It's crossing the line. Yeah. But if I take the word like out of my vocabulary and I'm only given the gospel word, now I can only say I love them or don't love them.
You just stay away from it.
Now I'm going to ignore it altogether. And that actually would probably be better, because I wouldn't give myself an excuse to not love them, because I know I'm not going to say it.
Right.
And if I'm not going to say it, it might push me further in. And when I say in my emotions, to say, okay, I do really, this part, they're great at this, or they're good at that, or they're good person here, good person there, whatever. It forces me to love them and ignore liking, not liking. And if I think about somebody differently, when I see them in the hall, I'll talk to them differently. All of us will. If I have fixated on what I don't like about someone, or what I don't love, let's say what I don't love about them, then when I encounter them, I'm absolutely going to speak to them from that place. We all know, we've all been around people who maybe we haven't seen for a couple of weeks, and then when we do get around, it feels a little awkward. We know what they've probably been saying about us in our absence. Why is that interaction so awkward? Because they don't feel comfortable being nice, realizing what they've said for the last 2 weeks that we have no idea, right? Like, that's usually what it is. That probably flows out of an unloving heart towards that person. Doesn't mean we're not a loving person, but about them we're not loving. So,
do you think that conversation has also relaxed the lines of submission and honoring authority, because now we have so much language that has softened like our heart behind the language? Like when we're given definitive words like love, it's like, okay, I'm just not going to say anything at all, because I'm not willing to say that I don't love that person, but I am willing to say I don't like that person. It softens the language, but the heart behind it is still there, but we use a lot of soft language. Do you think the contribution of more words and more language has also helped relax the lines of honoring authority?
I think it has, but I don't think it has to. I actually think the use of language could help us, that we would be able to redefine. If there's somebody, there's that old saying, love the person, hate the sin, kind of a thing. If I take that idea, if it forces me to say, okay, regardless of what you do, I love you because the gospel has called me to love. Well, what does that mean? I need to define that. I love you because this, that, the other thing. No, I love you because God told me to. Now, because of what love is, it's patient, it's kind. Now I've got to figure out, how can I articulate, using those words, something about that person? So I think language would actually help. What about them do I believe? What about them do I hope? What about them do I bear? Like, what of those things about this person, using the word love and words about love, how can I define them in such a way that's according to the gospel? That will allow me, I think, to have a better emotion towards them. But if you said, so then why don't you, like when the Bible talked about not being unequally yoked with unbelievers. Well, if you love them so much, why don't you do this or this? Oh, well, because as an unbeliever, here's where we're different. And I can define those things and say, this is why we don't maybe work together. Maybe this is why we don't eat together, vacation together, whatever the boundary is. That's why we don't do this. However, that doesn't stop me from loving them as a person. And then if they needed A, B, C, or D, I would absolutely be available for that, because I do that for people I love. Well, now the use of language has given me a broader spectrum to define this person. And I'm not defining them by the one thing I don't like or the 5 things I don't like. I'm defining them by loving gospel language and my relationship with them, though. So how I serve them will be different based on their behavior. So I think we're going to start making that distinction in the weeks ahead.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that is a discipline to do everything you just said. is an absolute, like taming the tongue.
Yeah. Perfect man, James says.
Yeah. Perfect man.
Perfect.
Able to bridle his tongue. Yep. So I'm excited for the weeks ahead. So you talked about the fruit of the Spirit from Galatians 5, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. And then it ends with, against such there is no law. Now, I've asked you this question, but for everyone else, what does it mean that against such there is no law?
Yeah.
That's historical language that we wouldn't use necessarily today. Like, against that, there is no law.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I define it that forces it to be spiritual. So I think that's where when you look at tongues will cease, prophecy will fade, knowledge will end, but love never ends. There is no end. That's why God is defined in God is just, yes, but also God is love. These are words that have eternal principle to them. There is no law against loving people, meaning it's never going to be wrong to love someone. It's not like we're told, love this person, don't love that person. There would be a law against love in terms of loving that person. So where the laws come in, it seems like, is on the service side of the conversation, not the love side of the conversation. And so figuring out how to do that is a whole nother, I think it's complicated. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, I probably wouldn't tell this story in church, but when I sat down with Dr. Rutland one night after a class over at SEU, and it was his habit to take every student in that grad cohort to dinner during the course of the semester. Anyhow, so he and I are at dinner, and he was just talking to me about pastoring and the idea of it, and he said, I told him I didn't really want to do this. And he was like, wow, okay. Now, this is 2007, so I've grown a lot since then. Keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. And he said, why wouldn't you want to pastor? I go, because I don't like people. And I kind of laughed, and he looks at me, and he's like, shook his head. He's like, oh, okay. And so, I think we have to learn how to love people. Mm-hmm. And there is no law against that. It's not right to not love somebody. It's never right to not love someone. So there is no law against that. Mm. And there's no law against patience. And there's no law against kindness. It's always the right thing to be kind. Does kindness judge? Sure. There will be those times where it's right to judge, but it still must be done in a kind manner. And, to your point about guarding the tongue, we can express displeasure in someone's behavior without attacking who they are. We just have to speak for a minute and then know when to stop. But that's, again, because I love somebody or because I'm kind or because I'm patient. There's no law against that.
And I guess no excuse not to.
Never an excuse.
Yeah. Again.
Never an allowance.
Discipline, that's hard.
And yeah, it's extremely hard. And I absolutely replaced my loving people with serving people. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's just been a journey for me to kind of work on my heart.
Yeah. I want to end with this. You pulled on the strings of my heart end of week 1, I think. I don't think it was this past Sunday. Talking about speaking in chapel. Mm-hmm. The preschool kindergarten chapel.
Yeah.
And
these kids are awesome.
Oh, man, when you show up, it's like, hey, Pastor Shawn, what's up? That is always a highlight of my kids' day. And if you're involved in that day, I'll say, I always ask them, how was school today?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. When you're in it, first thing, Pastor Shawn spoke at chapel today. It's like, oh, snap, okay, cool. And you always bring the excitement, the energy, the passion, the love, and it's caught. It's caught. And so I thank you for pouring into them and loving them. It means the world. And then you transitioned in that moment saying that we are to come to Jesus with faith like a child.
Yeah.
And they love so well because they've not been hurt so much to learn to be guarded.
Yeah.
And, oh, man, I just began to tear up because, it was just the other day that we went outside to go ride our bikes. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get them out of the driveway. Paula was offering all these excuses. Like, I can't get up. I can't get up on my bike. And then Tatum's in the way. All right, Tatum, roll out of the way. He's out of the way. He's not giving me enough space, whatever. And I'm like, so eventually, I mean, that was minutes and minutes. I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I looked like an idiot. We're outside. If neighbors were outside, they absolutely heard me. And I just went off. I was like, we're going inside. We're done. Paulo threw down his bike. He's like, I'm never riding my bike again, and went inside. And I was still frustrated in the moment that didn't really hit me. But later, I mean, it was just a few minutes later, they're over it. They're laughing, they're playing, they're asking me to play. They're asking me to hold them. They're saying, I love you, Daddy. And then later, like, my heart just melted in me. And I'm like, man, I missed it. Like, I allowed, talk about patience. Love is patient. You said, let's just stop right there. Let's just stop.
Yes.
I didn't make it past the first word.
Yeah, I didn't.
And so anyways, I think that was powerful to close out that message in that come to Jesus with faith like a child.
Yeah.
And they demonstrate these behaviors so well. I mean, they're very frustrating as well, don't get me wrong.
Yes.
But they love well. They forgive They forgive so quickly. They don't hold a grudge against me or mom or whoever.
Yeah.
They forgive so quickly. They demonstrate these behaviors so well. And it has taught me so much about my relationship with the Lord and my relationship with other people. And it's like, I need to be more like my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be demonstrating the behavior that they're to follow.
Yeah.
But sometimes they demonstrate for me. And so anyways, that was a powerful moment at the end of that message. And I think it was a good way to cap that off and maybe cap this off in that love and serve. We just need to be disciplined and simple in that regard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Anything?
Amen.
I know there wasn't really a question in there. I guess that was more of a thank you, and that was a powerful moment. But anything you want to...
Well, thank you for having awesome kids. They're fun when I get in there.
Praise the Lord.
Absolutely.
You want to cap off today with anything else?
No, I'm good.
All right. Very cool. Well, thanks for being here. And thank you guys for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Deep Dive and pray that it ministered to you. And hopefully we'll see you here this week back on campus.